Welcome back to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense and Uncommon World. As we start the new year, we've got a little bit of sad news. Mike, I know this past holiday season you ended up losing a member of your family there. You lost Pearl, who we have all heard, through some of these podcasts that we've been doing, as she was out sleeping and snoring along. So during some of our shows. So
Yeah, it was a tough one, but she was 16 years old, and we had her for about the last 6 or 7 years, and she's just a special girl who, like you said, we used to have competitions to see who would snore louder, me or her, and I think most times Julie gave her the nod, so, snoring louder. But yeah, it was a pretty sad way to ring in the new year.
yeah, well, our condolences to you and to Julie, and she's probably in a better place, and along with Albert and Athena and everybody else. So
Yeah, most definitely. They're in a better place, out of pain, out of misery, and just not with us. And that's always for pet owners. It's one of the most heartbreaking things that you have to deal with. I often say, unless you have a pet, you can really understand it. But those that do, know the grief and the pain that it brings.
yeah,
So thank
well,
you.
well, Mike, I know, we were looking to do the podcast yesterday, to record this podcast, and in talking to you, you said, "Well, I've got to go get my fourth shot." And I wasn't quite sure what the heck you were talking about. Getting your and as you explained it further, you said you're getting your fourth a vaccine shot.
hmm
What
I'm
the hell's
I'm
going on with you?
I'm setting one of my goals for 2022 was to become a test guinea pig for the Centers for Disease Control, and well, it's I got my first shot in January, second shot in February. They say it's supposed to last 8 months. I get to August, go for a regular blood test. They do the test for the antibodies. There are none there. So I got a booster shot back in August before it really got rolled out. And then earlier this week, or earlier last week, I should say, I went for a COVID test because someone in my family had COVID. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't have it. And I didn't, but they also did an antibody test, and what they had given me in August is no longer there. I don't know where the hell all this stuff goes. It goes wherever my hair goes, I guess. It just
Right. Yeah.
magically disappears. I went yesterday for another COVID shot, and so far, other than the third leg that I've grown, everything seems to be fine. But I think to me it was just, and I was talking to the pharmacist about this. It's just an indication of, at what point do we say enough is enough? At what point do we say we really don't know what we don't know? I mean, in talking to my doctor, I wasn't the only one that's had this situation. He said there was probably about 10 or 15 other people that had come in over the last few days since Monday, that had the same situation where, they had recently got boosters within the last 4 months or 5 months, and they were back to not having any antibodies. I think really what it shows is, even though people speak with a lot of confidence and authority sometimes, this is still all new territory. And, we don't know. There's still a lot we don't know, and we can, listen and assume, but, especially with Omicron the way it is and so contagious, it's just important to be safe.
Well, and that's one of the things is you're seeing a lot of the hospitals that are being right now impacted. Schools themselves in Sacramento, there was a high school that they had 500, I believe it was 500 kids that were tested, for COVID, and the school systems have now pushed back to online learning. There's we're beginning to see businesses looking to shut down, at least temporarily, to protect their employees and the owners from COVID. And and to make matters worse, you get a story coming out of France, which we'll make sure we put into the description of this podcast. A new variant, a new mutation that it carries basically 46 different mutations, and it's vaccine resistant and infectious. While
Oh, good.
Omicron seems to be, still the dominant strain, but they've found over in Europe, in France, this new variant, and so
So
I think
give it
this
a.
thing just
By the time we're done, it'll be here. I mean that's the other thing we've
right.
learned, which was amazing to me that we were so flat-footed on Omicron was that it started in South Africa, went to England, and literally within 24 hours was here, and over the course of what seemed like just a week, maybe it was more, but seemed like just a week, became the dominant variant over Delta by 95, 95%. That's what the thing was, the number of cases. And, our government was completely flat-footed about it. They admit they were flat-footed about it, which is pretty mind-boggling because, the one thing we do know is that this, the natural borders of oceans and mountains and things like that mean absolutely nothing anymore. What shows up in South Africa or France on Monday is certainly going to be in the shores of the United States by Wednesday. So they're still trying to catch up with the Omicron, and now if this is happening in France, you can bet it's going to be here not too soon. Which means maybe I get a fifth shot. I mean, I'm convinced that if I get to 6 shots, I get a free Subway sandwich.
Oh, you get our free haircut.
Free haircut. I'll take the Subway sandwich.
Yeah, you get a little card punched out,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but it's just it really is it's just an indication that there's still so much we don't know. But what we do know for sure is that something shows up on the other side of the ocean or the other side of the world. It's not going to be long before it's in our neighborhood.
right. Well, and the other thing too is, there's reports now that this variant is being contracted by animals. As we saw it before in the zoos where they were giving out COVID shots to some of the animals. There's this. I will put down in the description also the information on the story. Where they're finding deer like out in the wild that have COVID, and so it's scary times, especially if you've got people who are older, maybe people with underlying conditions. You've got kids that it's still kind of a place where we don't really know what is when this thing is going to be put to rest. It's creating a tremendous amount of strain over to the business community, government agencies. You've got the court systems are looking to go down back into remote access to shut down for a while. And so that'll delay for a lot of different folks that got business before the courts,
Right.
as it will for other government agencies.
It has a huge effect, and let's not ignore it. It has a political effect as well, because the options that were in the toolbox before in 2020 really aren't on the table anymore. It's a different administration, one that was supposed to solve this problem. In retrospect, it's like, I don't know how you solve a problem you can't control. And I'm not blaming anybody for that, but that's just the reality of a communicable disease. But then those things that were in the toolbox in 2020 are not going to be here in 2022 because of the political considerations of it. I think you have a community that at first was scared, and now you have a community that's tired of having to deal with this stuff. Even the people on the front line, they're just worn out from it. So, it's ever evolving, but the politics of it is also going to play a role because, one could argue, for example, and I said this over the holidays, if I have to show an ID card, a vaccine ID card to get into a restaurant in LA, why is it that you're having, what turned out to be a fantastic Rose Bowl game, for the Buckeyes especially,
Yep.
That, people could go to, or a Rose Bowl parade, which, was near my house here, that had, it
90,
still had less,
about 90,000 people, plus the
Yeah.
Rose Parade float.
right.
The
So-
parade itself, yeah.
Right. I mean, so it's like I don't envy people either who have to make decisions in the school system.
Right.
I certainly don't envy people in the government or elected official world that have to deal with this because, again, people are tired. People have had it. And the tools they had in the toolbox in 2020, which was to shut everything down, have people hunker down and all that kind of stuff, they can't do anymore because the administration has come in and said we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. So that's off the table. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle all of this.
Well, when you talk about identification, this is kind of an interesting topic we've talked about before, which is the voter IDs. I've got to show an identification. I've got to show proof to be able to go into restaurants now, to go into large venue places, but not when I go vote. That'll be interesting to see how that
Oh, it's trust me.
that
I mean,
bait unfolds in the next couple of months.
I think what's fascinating is that there are recent surveys. The lowest number I saw was 79% of Americans, favor photo voter ID. The highest number I saw was 85 or 86% that favor photo voter ID because it's common sense. I mean, it's used in every other country, I think, except England. And the only time they don't use it in England, not that I've ever studied up on this stuff, is if it's for local or municipal elections. The common thing is, well, people don't have ID. Well, that's bullshit. I mean, people have ID for everything. You're going to go to a liquor store, you need ID. You got to buy cigarettes, you need ID. You're going to go, any place, you need an ID. So, but what's interesting is that because Build Back Better has stalled in the Senate, thanks to Joe Manchin, the Democrats are now shifting to their voter integrity stuff, as they call it, or election reform stuff. And none of what they want to do are things, again, that people feel need to be done. First one being voter ID. So it's you know what? Stay tuned. It's only the first part of January. I think probably by the middle of January, it's going to be one of those things you see on the news, because I think the Democrats, Chuck Schumer in the Senate, is going to make it that way.
Well, and a little bit closer to home, you talked about the new year, new political year. We've got a big election coming up in November, and the reason we talk about this being a big election, there could be a shift in Congress as to who controls Congress. But more importantly, a lot of folks are going to have to run in new districts. We had redistricting. The maps were approved on December 27th. By December 27th, they're out there. People have now decided that if they're kind of drawn the map out of their district, they're now moving. Some Democrats are bunched in together with another Democrat who's an office holder, so they'll have to battle it out. Same thing for the Republican side. But, here closer to home, you've got the governor who's going to be issuing his address to the state, releasing his budget next week. And as he ends up providing that budget outline, a couple things have kind of caught our eyes this week. You had GasBuddy that put out a report that's saying that they're expecting gasoline prices in California to near up to $6 per gallon. And another significant thing that happened in January is you got minimum wage that went up to $15 a gallon. And, it's like, what good does it do that minimum wage has gone up to $15 an hour when you've got gas prices that are going to, that are looking to rise all the way to, near $6?
Right.
It seems like it just defeats the purpose.
Well, it's like the hamster running on the hamster wheel. You're still running at that same pace, or maybe the pace picked up, but they've made the wheel a little bit bigger, so you gotta run even faster. That's basically what they're doing here. I mean, there are places in California. I know there's an Arco station not far from Union Station in downtown LA that I go by on a regular basis, and before Christmas their price was $6.03. And that's, you pump it yourself, and that's the low grade gasoline, the 87. And again, I go back to the whole thing about what people care about, and that's what people care about. I mean, that's the kind of thing that people, it impacts their everyday life of what they're able to do or not do. I totally believe that the GasBuddy thing is probably going to be accurate. At some point in time in the winter, some refinery or something is going to shut down. The gas prices are going to spike. You've got the change of the new year. More gas taxes have been added in. So I definitely think it's going to go up, and it continues to have an effect. One of the things I wanted to mention, we had talked about this offline, is I saw a poll today from West Virginia. And, there was a poll out, and they asked people in West Virginia what they thought of their Senator Joe Manchin, especially in stopping the Build Back Better bill that he did, because he's been excoriated by the Democrats for it. And within West Virginia, amongst his constituency, his favorable, amongst those that are strongly favorable of him, went from like 27% to 54%. It nearly doubled his strongly favorable amongst his voters across the board in West Virginia. And then they asked the question about, and remember, West Virginia has fairly low gasoline compared to California, okay? I mean, theirs is probably in the low threes. They asked, do you think the price of gas is more, reducing the price of gas is more important than Build Back Better? And the answer was an overwhelming yes. And again, that's a state that the gas prices is probably in the 310, 320 range. So, you stop and look at what it costs here. It does have it, and it also has that ripple effect. By the way, I mean, for truckers, for delivery services, and all that kind of thing, it really does have, when you're paying 4 or 5, if we end up $6 a gallon, it's going to have a huge impact on the business community, because people are just, they're not going to be going out. I mean, you're going to get in your car and you're going to drive, 20 minutes to a great restaurant and have to pay 10 or 15% more because it costs more for them to get their food and their materials and everything else, and then pay more because they have to pay their servers more, and then have to take a test or show you've taken a test to get into the place. We're on a bad slope right here, but hey,
Right.
It's a new year. Think positive, people.
Well, and the thing
Go
is,
get a shot.
I know. Well, the thing is that, especially here in California, we can produce up to about 2 million barrels a day of oil. I mean, we've got the refineries. The problem is that we've got a governor and we've got a legislature that has been shutting down a lot of these refineries, for this idea of climate change, but yet they seem to be okay as long as we're importing them in from other countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and other places. And the thing is that as these gas prices continue to rise, they were just devastating our middle and working class, because and this is, I know we talked about this a lot to different folks, is like, elections do matter. If you looked at November of 2020, the average price of gasoline here in California was only $3.15. We're in the fours now, and expected to go near $6 come summer of 2022. And that's just amazing to me.
It's crazy, and it's what people are voting on. By the way, I mean, it's one of the things that is driving public opinion, at least at this point in time, and probably will continue to do so, because if you go from 315 to 375, what you get is people saying, "Oh my God, that's terrible! I got to pay 50 cents more." But does it really make a difference? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But when you start pulling it up from 315 to 415, or 475, or $5, or like you said, some places $6, that makes a real difference in people's pocketbooks, and changes the way they behave, and also changes the way they feel. So that does make a huge difference for folks. And I think you see that in polling numbers. I think you see that in the way campaigns are going to be run in 2022, up and down. But you made a good point, and it's worth noting. Elections do have consequences, and people, the people that we elect in California, their policy is, we understand, we want the gas, but we want the gas, but any of the negative things that might be associated with that, as it impacts the climate, we don't want it. We don't want that. So as a result of that, we're willing to stop our own production of it and pay more to bring the gas in, expose ourselves more to the security of that pipeline of fuel coming in exchange for a better climate. And
yeah, but the thing is that the pollution. Hold on here. The pollution.
There you go.
Is still happening,
Right.
and it's happening in a worse situation.
Exactly right. That's the part. That's the lack of common sense that exists in that policy. That's the hypocrisy that exists in that policy. If you really want to take that tact where you expose the security of our oil production, if you stop oil production because you don't want to have climate impact, then you don't have 100 ships sitting off the Los Angeles harbor in neutral, pouring, burning gasoline, burning fuel, burning, diesel fuel. You take policies on that mitigate the possibility of rabid and rapid wildfires. You take other action related to that. And that's why I think it's a Trojan horse, because their policy, while it may sound good, there are other things that they don't do that can have an even greater impact. And that to me is where the common sense is completely lacking in their policy.
Right. Well, as the governor does his State of the State address coming in next week, one of the other areas we're going to be really concentrating on is, will he talk about California's drought? We had Southern California, had quite a bit of rain. Northern California, I mean, we got a ton of snow up here, right, and rain. Every so often they go out there, the State Water Resources Control Board, water agencies go out there and they measure the snowpack. And this particular year, they found that we are currently in December, end of December, we were 202% over normal. And so rather than say, okay, great, we've got 202% over normal, it looks like we may be out of a drought or so forth, or, people, you still need to kind of conserve water or so forth. The State Water Resources Control Board has now given the authority to cities and counties to begin to issue fines for what they call water wasters, in California. And rather than the state, issuing fines, that authority is now being given to the locals. And what'll be interesting is, will the governor discuss any type of water infrastructure? There's a lot of projects out there. There's a lot of money that has already been approved by the voters. We are seeing a situation where we've got cities, in this past year that ran out of water. There is, and this is State Water Resources Control Board, they're indicating that the reason that they've given the authority for the cities and counties to begin to issue these $500 fines to households is because they anticipate to have a drier kind of January or February and March, and potentially higher temperatures in the summer, and thus, keeping us into some sort of drought. But the thing is that if they already foresee us being in another drought or things getting drier, then when it does rain, why not, go out and create as many projects as possible to go collect this water so it carries us over through one year and another and stop releasing all this water back into the ocean.
Right. Well, I laugh at what you said. We're expecting, dry weather in January, February, and March, and then warmer weathers, come after that. It's like, hasn't that been, I've been here 20 years. I think that's pretty normal. None of this is new. If you want to talk about something that's new, I think getting, what you just said, 202 inches or whatever it is of snowpack, that's different. That's new, okay? And so whatever the governor says about it next week, what really is the question is, what exactly is being done? In other words, these things take time to do. There's no doubt about it. They take time to do. But we talk about it a lot. Every year, same thing. It's like beating, I forget what they call it, beating the drum all the time. It's like every year, the same time, we say the same things and we do nothing about it. So really, next week, what would be cool is if the governor said, I've appointed this group that is going to start groundbreaking. I've told them they need to start groundbreaking by June 1 of 2022 to start putting in a desalination plant or a water retention plant, something that puts shovel in ground that says we're taking action, and do it in a way that gives people some confidence, unlike the train that's going nowhere. Because the time for talk is over. You can do this all you want. What you really should be judged on is what you do. And all the things you've talked about, The only thing that's unusual in California about what you talked about is the fact that we had so much snow and there's so much snowpack. Everything else you talk about was last year and the year before and the year before, and these guys don't do anything. And that again, going back to the common sense of this thing, at some point in time, the beating of the gums, as we used to call it back in the old neighborhood, they got beating their gums talking about stuff. You got to do something, and it would be nice to see that, but I'd really be surprised if you do.
Well, and it goes back into this idea of, is California a failed state? Is California broken? And I don't think it's a broken state. I think the problem is it just lacks leadership. It lacks leadership on getting people together and saying, you know what, get things done,
Right.
and holding people accountable. I think it's like one department doesn't do the job. Well, the governor's office, since they appointed them, they're not going to go out and criticize them, and another department's not going to criticize them because they all fall still under the governor, and they'll seem to kind of want to protect incompetency rather than saying, you know what, let's hold people accountable. Let's
Right.
have some timelines, because at the end of the day, this isn't money that just comes out of the sky. This is all taxpayer money, and if we've got we pay some of the highest taxes in the nation. We pay some of the highest fees for a variety of things, more so than anywhere else in the nation. Well, with all these taxes and fees, we expect things just to work. We expect things to function normally. And if we're going to pay, for the privilege of living in such an amazing state, then let's have that leadership actually do something and hold people accountable to it.
Exactly, and we don't have that. And what I wouldn't be surprised, not to be sarcastic or cynical, because I've never been sarcastic or cynical in my life, is that the governor would announce, well, we're going to build a water retention system that keeps all of the snowpack, and we're hiring the same people that put in the bullet train to take care of that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you'd almost would expect here. And by the way, I mean, the other part of this is that it happens here, and we think, well, that happens everywhere. It doesn't happen everywhere. I mean, that's the other part about this, is that we're supposed to be a state that's better, more creative, better minds, all of that kind of stuff. And sometimes what happens is you need to take the government out of the equation and turn people's ingenuity and creativity loose, with the government behind them pushing them to do it, to fix problems. That's really what the government should be doing, is turning to people that know how to do this. And the example I will use, I obviously wasn't here when this happened, was when the earthquakes happened in the mid-90s, and all of a sudden, like the 118 and other highways started to fall apart because of the earthquakes. The governor at the time, Pete Wilson, turned loose the private sector and incentivized them through government to get the job done as quickly as possible, because they knew if we were going to maintain our economy and stability, we needed to do that. And we don't have that now. It really is, to go back to what we were talking about energy. It's the government holds people back on what they're able to do, and that's different here than it is in other states. I mean, I'm not encouraging people to move, but the reality is what we experience here is not the same as in many other states. Both, by the way, both blue and red, and I think that's an important thing to note. I remember when I lived in Virginia for a while, we had a Democrat governor. They have a Republican one now, but it seems every place I live has got a Democrat governor. And you know what? The roads got plowed when it snowed. The garbage got picked up. When there was a problem, with the power, it got fixed. All of those basic things that you expect. When you turn down the faucet, you could drink from the faucet. The water was clean. It's not a red or a blue thing. It's a competent or an incompetent thing.
Well, we're going to switch gears here, Mike. I was driving down to Southern California right before the holiday break, and as I was driving down, going to see my parents and go to attend the Rose Bowl game, I was listening to Armstrong and Getty's show, radio show, and they had a repeat from a show prior, and they talked about this crazy cartoon. I don't know how else to describe it, that is happening in Denmark, and it's called Diller Man. Well, in Denmark, Diller translates to the word penis. So it would be John Penis Man. And it's this cartoon claymation of John, who, with his giant, enormous penis, walks dogs, uses it as a pogo stick, saves kids from drowning, and a variety of other things. And apparently, it is just like popular in this country,
especially people named John in Denmark.
and they talked about how John Oliver had done this piece on it on John Diller Man, and in John Oliver's way, he pokes fun at it, and also starts blaming our cartoons here that we have in the United States. He goes, of course, when you have Paw Patrols, who are just a bunch of dogs trying to be law enforcement and first responders, it's and a bunch of other stuff, but it's just.
There's been a new show there that's got a lot of attention.
Denmark's flagship broadcaster has just introduced a new children's show called John Diller Man that's essentially an animation about a man with a huge and uncontrollable penis. This man has a penis so massive and flexible it can save children from danger, fetch objects from a river, and even operate as a pogo stick.
Yeah, it's true. Denmark has a kids show called John Diller Man about a claymation Super Mario who's dressed for a ski vacation and a 1920s beach party at the same time, and who, much more importantly, has a massive stripy snake dick. So I think now you can see why I wanted to talk to you so badly. The dealer in Diller Man is Danish slang for penis, meaning that his name in English is basically John Penis Man, which is a perfect name for a man with a magical dong. It would actually be a great nickname for my own penis if I hadn't already nicknamed it Hugh Grant, because it's British, aging, and I've been told it can be unpleasant to work with. And you should know, it turns out, John Diller Man can do nearly anything with his appendage. In his show, he uses it to walk some dogs, as you can see here. He also uses it as a tightrope in a circus act, and to decorate a Christmas tree in spectacular fashion. And in one unforgettable episode, he even gets suspended from balloons by his penis, which is both completely terrifying and also how I assume Cirque du Soleil performers commute to work. The show started airing in January and was an instant hit, with the first episode being viewed by more than 250,000 children in just 5 days. And I've got to say, it's so much more imaginative than what passes for children's entertainment here, because think about it. What do we have? A fascist puppy police state, evangelical vegetables, a monkey who plagiarized his only personality trait from cats, and an 8-year-old aardvark who dresses like Alan Alda. None of these characters can hold a candle to John Diller Man, because I guarantee none of them have ever saved a group of drowning children by using the centrifugal force of their cartoonishly long schlong. You think Barney the dinosaur could do that? Of course not. He'd probably just sing a song about friendship as though children sank into the waves. Do something, Barney!
I know it's in itself is just it's stupid, funny, or whatever, but I mean, it just seems like we've lost our minds.
But we found something else apparently while we lost our mind.
Yeah.
All I can think of is that's that's a cartoon maybe on Saturday mornings in Denmark, which would probably equate in the United States to an episode or two on South Park, and probably the best thing now, since it's so popular, is to be a guy named John in Denmark and go into the bar at night and try and get lucky. But when you told me about that, it may make some sense, and let me just spell out what I mean by that. I looked up a few other things that are like cultural traditions or cultural things that are accepted in Denmark, which has become now a new fascinating country that I think we need to go visit. One of the things is, like, on New Year's Eve, before 12 o'clock, whether you've been drinking or not, you're supposed to stand on a chair, and as the clock strikes 12, you jump off the chair. And I was thinking to myself, well, can you imagine if they did that in Times Square? In February, they have something called Fastenlaben, which is a mix of Halloween and Carnival. Children dress up in costumes and hit a cat out of a barrel, similar to a piñata. I'm sure Peter has a problem with that. There's another one I saw. Oh, then there's Mortenshofen, which is great. I love this one. On November 10th, they have specific dates here. That's what's interesting. They celebrate St. Martin's Eve by treating ourselves to a scrumptious dinner of a roast goose, potatoes, and gravy. And why do you do that? Because it has to do with a French guy named Martin who hid in a flock of geese to avoid being named a bishop. But the geese betrayed him by flying away, and Martin got his revenge by claiming that every family should feast on a goose. And then for, all of, there's one other one here I saw, all of the single ladies out there, if you're 25 and you're single, one of the things they do is they drag you out into the street by your friends who cover you in cinnamon. But if you get to be 30 and you're still single, instead of dragging you out into the street and covering you in cinnamon, they cover you in black pepper. And apparently they introduce you to their best friend, who's a doctor named John Dinglemeyer, or whatever the hell his name is. So, sometime this year, I think we should have the Hector and Mike experience from Denmark. And I'm interested in trying a few of these traditions. There's a few people I'd like to find and drag out into the middle of the street and throw black pepper on, whether they're single or married.
Well, after you read that, maybe I do want to go there and just go check out the place. I'm just like,
it may make more sense now that they have a cartoon character with a big penis that kids are supposed to jump onto when they're drowning.
Well, but the thing is that this is okay. So, like you said, South Park. Yeah, South Park isn't made for kids. This one's made for kids.
Yes,
this one's made for kids. This is a kids show. And so, initially, when I heard it on the Armstrong and Getty show, I thought it was a joke, and then I'm listening to this, and I'm like, oh my God, this is. No, it's I go real. The first thing I thought, it was like, I got to tell Mike about this.
Yep, it's real. What was in someone's head, so to speak, has become now a cartoon, and maybe it fits, but it's that's a good way to ring in the new year, right? You jump off the chair and land on the person
Diller
next
Man
to or something. Yeah, and Diller Man. I don't. I obviously, in case anybody didn't guess, I'm a South Park aficionado. But I just, you're right. I mean, what's funny to me is that that's a cartoon in Denmark and would be considered, would be probably, never be considered to be a cartoon here, but probably would be considered, a great episode on South Park. So there's an interesting difference in culture there. And after reading the other stuff, I'm, Denmark's on my new bucket list for 2022 if we can ever get over COVID.
Oh, there you have it. But Mike, we'll leave it there. You kind of went into the gutter there for a little bit. So.
Yeah, well, and hopefully nobody needs any help, and John Dillemeyer is too busy doing something, going out to the beach and saving people, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess he'd make a great lifeguard.
Yeah. Well, Mike, have a good day, and
Happy New Year,
we'll talk soon. Yeah.